Castle Rock fans, welcome back to the Castle Rock After Show here on AfterBuzz TV. Tonight we are breaking down episode 7, The Queen, and it was indeed very much all about our queen. We will be talking about Ruth Deaver's emotional journey with dementia and the eerie connection between the kid and Mathew Deaver. We have a lot to talk about, so stick around.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Guys,
I know.
we predicted it. Not only everything with Ruth and her emotional journey, but Pangborn.
I know.
Saw it coming, man.
We thought this was coming. We talked about it last week. I didn't think it would happen so soon.
Yeah, not in this episode.
The guy was in love. He had to die.
Not in this show. We're not having real love in this show.
No, yeah.
Oh, what's so sad though?
He was full of love. He was the only one not
He was the
supernatural.
pure of
He
heart.
was pure of heart, normal.
He was the gunslinger. He was the hero. The hero had to pass on.
There's just so much going on in this episode. But before we get into that, I just want to introduce my panel. To my left, we have
Xia Anderson. Hi, everyone.
Jorge-Luis Pallo, what's happening?
And I'm Veronica. Coming up later in the show, we will be talking all about Ruth Deaver's memories, her journey with dementia, her relationship with Pangborn, Henry, Mathew Deaver, as well as giving you some Easter eggs and some fan shoutouts. But before we get into any of that, guys, we already kind of discussed it, but overall thoughts.
This was such a great episode because we wanted to see more from Sissy Spacek / Ruth just in general. And I like that we got to see, even though I'm not sure how much of it is true, we still got to see a little bit more about Henry's past. And I have been waiting for that. So we don't know the full story of how he disappeared, but you're kind of getting more pieces of what his father Mathew was like. And I enjoyed it, but it still left you kind of wanting more.
As the show does every episode.
Yeah, we asked for more Sissy Spacek and we got it, and thank you for giving it to us, really. That was what a performance. MVP
Perfect.
to Sissy Spacek. I'm sure that after working on that episode, she must have taken a nice long nap. She was working every day, 16 hours on set, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
And I love how it interweaved her whole time walker thing, whether or not, and we still don't know. I mean, is it something supernatural? Is it something uncanny? Is it something, or is it just dementia? I mean, we opened up the episode with the doctor saying, hey, maybe it's time to think about a place to live.
Right, because she's basically saying that it can only go in one direction, which is it's only going to get worse, and eventually you're going to need to be taken care of.
And boy, did it get worse.
Pangborn's not here to take care of her anymore, you guys. Even fearless Astrid Hofferson in chat says, "Rest in peace, the man who was never given the chance to truly be with his true love."
I know that's the most heartbreaking
so freaking sad.
And that's something that we're going to get into a little bit later when we're talking about. We see the beginning stages of their relationship. Now, for Pangborn, it was probably there all the time, but we finally kind of get to see, while Mathew was alive, the spark come alive a little bit But Jorge, to your point of Sissy Spacek probably needing a long nap after this episode, because she was in every scene. Even if it was a flashback with a young Henry, a young Pangborn, it was always her. And I felt like that was so great just because it was her. That was her present. This is how we know her, and this is how she sees the world around her. Like, she doesn't really remember herself in her younger years going back in her memory. She remembers herself as she is today.
And she's there. Like, she's actually physically reliving those moments.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that takes her out of those moments is those little chess pieces that she leaves laying around, like little, like her anchors to reality, right?
And they always bring her back. Like she said, I think she called them her breadcrumbs. They always bring her back when she finds them, and then she's back into the moment. And it was especially interesting when, I'm sure we'll get to this too. I'm sorry, I was getting way ahead of myself. When the kid walks into the house and she sees Mathew, her dead husband, Henry's father, come in, and then he starts saying everything that Mathew should know.
Well, that's why that song was playing, the one that we just played for the intro of the show. Elvis Presley, Blue Moon.
Was there a wedding song?
He said that, oh, your husband played this for you on your wedding night.
How does he know that?
How does he know that?
Okay.
Oh, gosh. You know what? I think we should just get into it because I feel like that's the most, that's the thing that's on our minds. And then we can go back and dive deeper into a little bit of Ruth's happier memories. Yes. But let's dive into all of the Mathew and the kids stuff and this eerie connection that may be between them, because as we were discussing before the show, is it just a figment of her imagination? Does she really believe this is her husband, or is Mathew living through the kid? Is there some spiritual connection there?
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking that he was possibly living through the kid. And I love this part when Molly shows up and she is looking for Henry because she thinks that he might be in trouble. And you realize that Ruth knew that Molly killed him, that killed her husband. She says, no, you did right. So obviously he did some, besides just the slightly crazy things that we already saw in this episode. I mean, not slightly crazy, it's weird, but there's still, I feel like there's much, much worse, and that's just sort of scratching the surface.
That's another thing that's so great about this episode is how everything is even more intertwined, and you see how, and everything was breadcrumbs.
Yes.
If you really look at the episode, like everything that was being it was being layered as little breadcrumbs that brought us to that tragic ending at the end, right? Everything with the dog, with it. It's a great line. It's not a he. She's not a son of a bitch. She's a bitch.
Right.
I could say that, right? She said it. Anyway,
She said it.
It's okay. It's okay. But it was all little breadcrumbs that were leading to that, to even like where to find the bullets and the gun. I mean, everything is intertwined, and who this kid is, and how does he know all these things? How does he know that her ritual is to take a bath?
Yes, and she says too, before all of that, when Molly comes to the door, she says, you did right, but now he's back, not in the past, in the present.
Yeah.
And that's when the whole Time Walker thing comes in, right? She's like, I'm going to take care of this myself.
Yes.
And finally, we figure out what happened to Warren?
Wendell.
Finally, we figured out what happened to Wendell.
She sent him away because she knew that something was about to go down because, again, like the Time Walker thing coming into play, she wanted to take care of the situation.
Honestly, I'm kind of surprised that he left.
Seriously, Wendell, what's up with that?
Yeah. I was like, hey, I mean, I know you're a kid and that's your grandmother and everything, but...
Yeah, you live in Nana alone with some weirdo.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you don't do that.
A big, tall man weirdo.
There's just been so many red flags in the past couple episodes, just in the mere fact that Henry's like, the kid, yeah, you could stay at our house. It might be like the back house, but you could stay here.
Right.
Just like,
sure.
But you don't know this kid.
You were locked in a in a dungeon for a couple of decades.
God knows how many years, Sure. Cool.
You're not a loose cannon or anything. No big deal.
Sure. You know, birds fall out of the sky whenever you appear.
Yeah.
Like, they don't fly, they just fall.
You set fires.
You set fires?
Whatever.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
If anybody has any theories in chat, let us know, because there could be
Zia
anything.
is on this live chat. No, going back to what you were saying, Jorge, about the breadcrumbs, everything was a breadcrumb. I have to be honest, it came together as the further I watched the episode, but in the beginning, I did feel lost. But I think that was completely intentional because I'm sure that's how Ruth feels, lost.
Yeah.
She never knows when in time she is, which is the point of the chess pieces, and we see when she gets those chess pieces.
I felt like that once at a Grateful Dead concert back in like 2003, back in the early.
You were time walking yourself then.
And I was just like, hey, all right.
Now there's a name for it. Now you know. Yeah. But to get back to all of the Mathew Deaver stuff, we already were kind of speculating that this man was probably troubled. We can assume that maybe him and Henry didn't have that great of a relationship, and maybe that's why Molly always alluded to the fact, oh, Henry, you hated him, you wanted him dead kind of thing. And in this episode, we do see that he was not a great guy. In the very beginning, it's hinted at that he killed the dog, right?
Yeah.
He killed Puck, the dog.
Poisoned
her
Poisoned the
because he
dog.
was annoyed.
And
Who does that?
I believe Ruth
Bad people.
said this line, I believe it was about Mathew. I could be wrong, but she was saying, like, you don't know what he's capable of.
Yes, and I'm with you. I think she was also talking about Mathew as well.
Yeah.
It also seemed to be some sort of like something that he's dealt with before that had come back, because she kept on talking about going back to the doctor.
A growth.
Oh, yeah.
I think they mentioned that it was a growth.
Some sort of growth.
Yeah. So
So
he was sick.
So he was already sick. So this led him down that path of just being just this rotten human being,
Yes.
really, right? I mean, what was that whole thing with the gun and telling him
Scaring everybody.
But I wonder if he was really sick or if he was just hearing the schisma, which we now know is what he's hearing.
Ooh.
Well, then again, that goes back to the whole story with Ruth. I mean, are we seeing a supernatural world? Are we seeing a world of the uncanny and you know, or are we seeing a world that people are just, this is them going through their crazy lives,
Right.
you know, dealing with their illnesses. You know, is it a story about people dealing with their illnesses and whatnot? Oh, terrible.
Oh, I know.
It's
That would
like,
be
what-
so sad.
Yeah, or is it all intertwined into the same? Because Castle Rock, you know,
Does something.
Does something. To
Is it
people.
Castle Rock that does something to people, or is it a certain person in Castle Rock that's doing it? And I don't know. But I definitely saw, this is just going back to Henry and his father. I definitely saw moments where Mathew was looking at Henry when he was a boy, and he looked like he hated his son.
Yes, I got that too.
Yeah. He just was looking at him like he doesn't trust him, and he hated him.
He resented it.
He resented him, maybe because of how close that Henry
He
and
made
Ruth
it,
were.
maybe.
He did make that comment later on in the episode. He's like, isn't he too old to watch you take a bath? And
Right.
Ruth was like, well, he's my son. It's fine. And he was like, not by blood.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
But she obviously didn't feel that way. She felt like he
This
was
is
her
my
actual
child.
son. Yeah.
So there was still some sort of distance kept between Mathew and.
And he kept taking him out to hear the schisma. Obviously, kept taking him out to do that. And Ruth kept asking, "What are you doing out there with him?" And that obviously scared Henry as well. He definitely didn't like going out there to do that. He said, "Can you please tell my dad that I just want to rest," even though he didn't actually have a fever. He just wanted to not be with his father anymore.
Well, what we see with Mathew is that he was ill in some way, shape, or form before the schisma even came about, because there was that whole scene in the woods with Ruth and Henry where he's talking about how he wanted to kill himself, but then he heard the voice of God, and that's what we learned in the previous episode was the schisma. And so ever since then he becomes a little obsessive. I shouldn't say a little, I would say a lot.
A lot obsessive. Yeah.
He becomes a lot obsessive with Henry and seeing if Henry sees it, which again, I'm still very curious on why he needs to know if Henry hears it. Is it to validate himself that he's not crazy, or is it some in his mind because he was a religious figure, he needed to make it connected to a big religious path?
Yeah, he's probably trying. He thinks of it as he's saving them at the same time. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what he's taught. I mean, he opens up the whole when they're at the picnic and he pulls the gun out. He's talking about suicide and all that. He opens up the whole conversation with wanting them to experience the same thing that he experienced.
Yes.
And when you say something like that, it's about wanting you. I really want you to try this because I think it's going to be great for you, right? I'm trying to save you. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to make you even better. I think that's the angle that he was coming from on that.
And it's odd, though, that he was doing it so much with Henry and not at all with Ruth. He just, not that we've seen yet. It's possible that he was, but it was just that one scene with the picnic with the both of them, and then he just starts taking Henry out, and Ruth is left home alone.
I think it's because maybe in his mind he thinks he can manipulate Henry better.
Right.
Whereas we did see a lot of drawback from Ruth. She was like, I'm going to take him. My suitcase is packed. And then...
By the way, don't ever say that. Just do it.
Just, yes,
don't,
just
don't,
leave.
Don't say it. Just do it. Just
Yes.
leave. Sorry.
No, I'm
just
with
like,
you.
what are
Things
you
are that
doing,
crazy.
woman?
And I feel like that's something she really deeply regrets with how
Yes.
everything happened. Like, she wanted to take Henry and to leave, and she just couldn't end up doing it. But then, as we see in the end, she is able to overcome that part of her past because this Mathew figure, whether it's the kid, whether it's Mathew reincarnated, we don't know yet, is basically telling her, you know, you don't know where the bullets are. You can't do anything necessarily. But she overcomes that.
Right.
And she remembers. Yeah.
Well, that's the part that talks back to her that's in her own mind. Right? When Mathew comes back and says that that's the part that's in her own mind and says, I am in your own mind.
Right. I can't tell you where it is because I'm you and you don't know and you don't remember. I liked that, the way they did that.
A bad peyote trip, I'm just telling you.
Yes, that is awful. I also find it interesting that the kid going in there, so we find out, obviously, that the kid wasn't in there, well, not necessarily wasn't in there to hurt Ruth, but he certainly didn't try to hurt her. He was taking care of her. In kind of a menacing way.
Yeah, in a very
menacing way. I don't know what his ultimate plan or goal was, but he certainly didn't.
What's his ultimate goal in general?
I know, we don't know anything.
Well,
but he didn't pursue her.
Did you see the look on his face when he said, "I'll draw you a bath"?
Yes.
It was like,
I'll draw you a bath.
That was creepy as
very creepy. And also when he said, "You should go lie down on the couch so I can keep an eye on you." I was like, oh my!
I was like, what? No, it's all creepy, and then Ruth is able to find the bullets, and that's what leads into our tragic ending with Pangborn. And I think that's a great segue to talk about her and her love for Pangborn. But before we get into that, guys, we have a very spooky announcement for all of you.
Spooky announcements. This is a spooky announcement coming to you. Hey, AfterBuzzers. Our network produces after shows for nearly all your favorite TV shows. For dramas, reality TV, sci-fi, and more. There is no network that works harder to serve television fans. But we need your help. We're asking that you please subscribe to one or more of our YouTube channels. By subscribing to our channel, YouTube will suggest content that's tailor-made for you, and you'll help AfterBuzz continue to grow. And if you're worried about pesky notifications, don't be. Because they're optional! So hit that subscribe button now for this channel and check out our other AfterBuzz YouTube channels as well. Let us know you did so in the comments and we'll thank you on air. For now, thanks for being the best fans and for helping us be the ESPN of TV talk.
Thank you, Jorge.
You're welcome.
Music was perfect.
Perfect. Everything was perfect. As we mentioned, we love seeing your comments. We love seeing the discussion as well as your predictions. We always love to get shout outs when we can. Zia, do we have anyone in the live chat? That is...
Yeah, we've got Fearless Astrid Hofferson. She says, or he, sorry, I'm not sure, says, OMFG, why did Castle Rock make me feel?
Same.
Yes, I agree.
Same.
This was, and we also have Colin McKinney. The Queen was an awesome surprise, though I'm dying to know how Henry made out. Also, same.
Same.
You guys, we're all on the same page here. We've got Adam Morales, OMG, the ending, the chess pieces, crying face, again, same.
Same.
You guys.
Ditto.
We should definitely go into that ending scene.
Oh, man.
So
I knew it. We predicted it last week.
Did, yes.
So beautifully done.
It was.
And you know, as soon as she starts firing, you're like, that's not
him.
That's
not
Alan.
No.
Yeah.
And the end of the last episode, he's going to look for her, and the kid is sitting out on the front. So.
And then we realize why all the house is all turned over. She did it herself.
Yeah.
And the blood that was from that we saw in
From
that
the kid.
is from the kid because she stabbed him.
Yeah.
Oh,
It was.
man.
It
So
was
we were
nice.
just like,
yeah.
I kept on flashing back a little bit to the last episode too, with the kid sitting on the stoop and being like, "Why'd you leave me in that trunk, Sheriff?" And he was just like,
So dejected.
so dejected, and maybe he did have an effect. The events that transpired then.
Maybe
He knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, maybe him just being there set her off on that destructive path. Or maybe he's just like a really, really bad luck talisman. And anytime he's around, like, you know, like Domino from Marvel, where she's just lucky.
The bad luck.
Yeah, but like horrible things happen. Or not horrible, just everything's lucky for her. For him, just anyone surrounding him is just horrible luck. Everything bad happens.
Maybe if
He's like Murphy's Law.
What if he's like a static in the frequency that everybody else is hearing?
Yeah.
What if he's the disruptor of harmony, in a sense? And whenever he comes in, he just throws everything.
Throws the waves
Just
off.
He throws the waves off.
Just tell me at this point.
You're like, I just want to know.
Just tell me. But no, that ending was so tragic, and especially in this episode where up until now, I mean, we've seen the relationship between Pangborn and Ruth, and from Pangborn, we've heard how long he's loved her. But this was the episode where we got to see that through her memories. We got to see, him in church, scandalous in church, giving her some winky eyes.
Which, by the way, Mathew saw when he was giving his sermon. He 100% noticed that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He knew.
But I wondered, I'm sure he did, because I felt like he was possessive. He was obsessive. So that definitely affected him. And then, but we also see Pangborn not only with his love for Ruth growing, but we also see him trying to just be a supportive friend, where she goes to report the dog is missing. And he's like, I want to help you, but because there has been no physical altercation, I can't do anything. But as a friend, get out of there.
Right. Run away with me.
Yeah.
Dang it, Ruth. And he also said, I don't want you to leave. She's like, I can't leave Henry. He's like, I don't want you to leave Henry. Bring him. What are you talking about?
You see now, like, Alan is also such a white knight, right?
Yes.
He's such a white knight that he doesn't even go and do something to make implicate Mathew in something.
No.
What does he do? He leaves. He leaves Castle Rock.
But then, like a white knight, he comes back.
He comes back. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of like a gray knight. I would have framed Mathew with, I would
Also,
put some.
Sorry, I have to. I just have this. I have to ask. Talking about the gunshots, how coincidental is that? I came here because of gunshots the same night that she is shooting a gun and kills him.
Oh, I didn't.
Does that intersect somehow? I'm wondering, or is it just a weird coincidence?
I'm sure it does. This show
It has to be, right?
Everything is
it
connected in this
leans into
show.
that whole time, that time space continuum being out of sync kind of thing, or when she was saying in the last episode how she's done this before, kind of thing.
Maybe two times existing in one.
So like how these time, what do you call them?
Paradox?
Like there's a paradox that
Timelines.
these timelines, thank you, are kind of blending together. I don't know.
The show just makes me want to go,
Why? Tell me more.
No, there's just so much with that. Again, going back to where, like, in the beginning of the episode, I was like, what? What's going on? I'm so confused. But by the end, you get it. And the very, very end, where he comes back to Castle Rock, and he's like, I'm here for you. And then she's like, don't leave.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I had tears welling. They were welling. I had to swallow to just come back down.
Because you can, and it was such an interesting difference to see her relationship with her husband, with Mathew, and her relationship with Pangborn. Her relationship with Pangborn was so much more romantic and pure. He was teaching her magic. Every time she saw those memories, she was so happy. She loved those memories. Everything with Mathew was just toxic.
Yes, she was scared all the time. She was worried. She was constantly having to look over her shoulder.
She had to watch out for her son so much. It was just a complete difference.
Don't leave. Please don't leave.
And he took care of her. I'm going to cry again thinking about it, you guys.
It's going to be hard going forward in the next episode.
Yeah, without him.
Without her, with Ruth, with people dealing with this, the aftermath of this.
I think that honestly, the saddest part for me, besides him dying, was when she realized she had killed him, when she realized who it was, and she's devastated, obviously, and then she comes out and her brain takes her away from that moment, and I don't think she knew what happened anymore.
That's hard.
Because she went, she went back in and was...
she just completely left the situation.
Yeah.
Like Elvis
She didn't
had left
call
the
anybody,
building
right.
at that point. She went upstairs, took a shower, right?
And then went back to meeting him.
Went back to meeting him, went back to start. It was such a beautiful moment, too, his whole death. I was reading this other article on, I think it was a Hollywood Reporter, and they were talking about how they want, rather than having this, painful death, that they wanted it to be a quiet death kind of thing. and it was like Alan Pangborn's
It was still
last.
painful.
But that was like his last gift to her. By like, even if it was pain, like he loved her so much, he didn't want her to see that he would be suffering.
That's why he did the deep, even breathing.
Mm-hmm.
He was just doing that deep. That makes that so much more powerful.
Yeah. Right? Doesn't that, oh my God.
Why'd you say that? Oh, everyone listening, don't look at my face right now.
Oh, she's all right.
Oh man,
Yeah.
that's in those painful last moments. How do you even think of that?
Because he loved her so much.
Oh my gosh.
He loved her so much he didn't want her to see him in pain.
Till the very,
To the
end.
very end. You shot me.
Can we
but-
get another round of applause? Also MVP, Alan Pangborn. Everyone. My gosh. This guy. Yes. Oh.
This makes his death even
More.
more tragic.
I know. So much for not painful death.
Yeah, well, painful for us.
Painful for us,
suppose,
maybe
but,
not-
maybe not so much for him.
Or
it was painful for him. He just didn't want anybody to see it.
No. Oh gosh, I can't even. But they're such a pure love to the very, very end. Like I said, I am so intrigued, I guess, to see what's gonna happen with all of this aftermath, especially when Henry comes home.
Right.
man.
His house is in shambles. Alan's dead.
His son is gone. His
Wendell,
son
what
can just
the
go to the
hell?
mall.
Wendell is gonna like hate us.
little
Why
bit.
did I leave my grandma?
You went to the mall to go buy, go to GameStop and buy a hot dog on a stick. What are you doing, kid?
Come on.
I feel like he sensed her urgency, and that's kind of why he went. But at the same time, no.
But at the same time, then you go to the neighbors and say, "Call the cops."
Yeah.
Like
please.
now, that weird kid that burned down the Juniper Valley. That was on the news a little bit ago. He's in my house now.
Do you think the kid intended for this to happen because he was getting Alan back for leaving him in the trunk and just letting Lacey drive away with him?
Like yes.
You think so?
I feel like yes. I feel like the kid is an agent of chaos.
Yeah.
I feel like I still personally feel like he doesn't do it intentionally. Maybe he has those thoughts, but I feel like either he's not doing it intentionally or he's not in control of how his powers work. But gosh.
I feel like he's Pennywise, just not full Pennywise yet.
This is just the beginning origin story of
Maybe.
Pennywise.
Maybe,
except that
or just
this
like
has already happened in it.
or Pennywise,
Year-wise.
or the rebirth of Pennywise because he got killed in
Maybe.
in it. I don't know.
Maybe he can't actually die and he's just born again.
Or a different version of.
Oh my gosh.
So much to think about. So much happened this episode, but do you guys have any final thoughts?
I'm going to go home and cry.
Yeah.
I'm going to go home and cry.
I'm wondering if we're gonna see more Scott Glenn later on in like flashbacks.
I hope so.
I think
I
since they've
really
opened
love
up
him.
this portal of Ruth living out her memories, I think that's definitely a possibility.
Well, I hope we do.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But
great.
kudos, actually, just kudos to the two professionals that on that to Sissy Spacek and Scott
Yes,
Glenn.
definitely.
I mean, some killer performances from both of them. So
Definitely. And what sounds like kudos? Cujo. Ooh, there's a lot of dogs in this episode. Was
Yes,
there any
there are.
correlation? I am not entirely sure. But before we go into any of our Easter eggs that we tried to find this episode, I just want to take a moment to remind everybody about iTunes. Of course, you can always watch us on YouTube, give us comments there, discuss with us on our live chat, but you can always catch us on iTunes, and we encourage you also to listen to us there. Leave us a review, leave us a comment. We love to see your comments, your discussions, and we love to give more shout outs. So definitely check that out as well. All right, Zia,
We have a few Easter eggs.
we have a few.
All right. So apparently this is this entire... Oh.
Such a different tone from everything this episode was.
Ooh, yeah, I know. It's not the same. So apparently this entire episode is very, very similar to a book called Gerald's Game.
I believe that's a Netflix movie.
Oh, is it a movie? Oh, it is a movie.
Think, yes, I believe so.
Oh, okay. It's also a novel, so it must have been turned into a movie as well. Okay. Yeah, so they think it's an inspiration because both stories are very similar. It's about a woman in danger who needs to re-examine different memories to save her life. And they both stories, I guess, feature stray dogs very prominently. So that's something that they kind of threw in there. And expensive cuts of beef, which was also in this episode. So they have a lot of,
Okay.
And apparently there's also conversations with a dead husband who, like, berates her until she figures out what her problems and solves whatever issues she's having. So that was obviously a very prominent one because they're very similar. There's also the radio warns the residents of Castle Rock to avoid the Augusta Turnpike. Apparently, in Stephen King's story Mile 81, a mysterious station wagon eats visitors at a rest area along that road.
Ooh.
So eats them.
Interesting.
Yes.
Huh, okay.
So stay away from that.
I've always found station wagons to be quite suspicious.
It's always a station wagon.
It's always a station wagon.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't trust anyone who drives them. I'm just kidding. So no offense to any station wagon drivers out there. And apparently also Ruth reads Hansel and Gretel to Henry in one of those memories. And apparently that is a story that Stephen King comes back to multiple times. In his introduction to an uncut version of The Stand, he summarizes the fairy tale to illustrate the plot of a story. Illustrate how the plot of a story is nowhere near as important as how it's told. And also, it's in his classic novel, It.
It wasn't. I don't think this was as much an Easter egg as it was just a tie-in.
It's a tie-in.
The breadcrumbs.
From
that book as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's another good one. To protect her grandson, Ruth sends him to go shopping at the mall. It's called Chester's Mill. And so apparently Stephen King will definitely recognize this, is the town which gets shut off from the outside world in Under the Dome.
Right.
Oh, that movie which became the television show.
That was the CBS.
So that's Chester's Mill.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay,
Well, they
good.
actually had some really cool Easter eggs in this episode.
Yeah. Again, guys, as the series continues on, for us, it's becoming a little bit harder to notice some of these, but they are so interesting. So if any of you out there are like us and are like, wow, that's interesting, or if you are top-notch Stephen King fan and you can recognize any of these, definitely let us know because that's really cool.
Oh, I feel like my chat was frozen. I thought nobody was saying anything, and now it's showed up, and everybody, they had so many.
Oh, what else you got?
Okay, so we got Cass Galt said, so she had to have interacted with the past for the neighbors to have heard it, but that creates a plot hole. Oh, okay. Well, it showed she could sometimes interact with the past. 3 years ago, Pangborn showed up at her house after neighbors heard gunfire. We learned that's the present. So that's, again, them intertwining. Oh, Adam Rowell says, I think the kid had the shine like Danny.
Oh.
That's an interesting
Just
point.
interesting theory.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Cass Galt, the kid is channeling Mathew, which is kind of what I thought.
I feel like that might be the most likely theory
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah.
Not that he's the reincarnation, but that he's channeling, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, great theories, guys.
Alexandra Sandu says, I don't know about the details of it all, but I suspect that by the end of it, we'll not know for sure whether it's just mental illness and other issues or paranormal sci-fi. It will be ambiguous on purpose. Ooh, that would be infuriating.
Don't do that.
For the most part, I'm kind of okay with that, but I do want specific answers. I do want some closure.
Yes, please.
Some things can be left ambiguous, but I do want some closure. But thank you. Thank you, Zia.
Yeah. Oh,
Just
I'm
want to
so
know who the
bummed.
kid is. Just tell me who that kid is.
We should talk about who we think the kid is. So I think that's a great segue to get into some predictions for next week's episode, everybody.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
The kid is awful. That's my theory. The kid is
just
awful.
rotten.
He is awful.
It's so interesting because in the very beginning, Zia and I believe April also had this conversation with us, and maybe you too, Jorge. We were all like, we feel sympathetic towards him.
We did.
You know? Like this
We
poor
did.
guy. No, not anymore. No,
Yeah, you guys all fell into the Skarsgård trap.
we did.
Yeah.
Well,
I was like, no way.
well, it was also
bad.
it was also just the character.
The
He
character,
looked so
yeah.
helpless Especially in the first episode, he looked pretty helpless.
Yeah, he didn't know what was going on. He didn't know how to use a shower. He was clearly scared.
That's how they lure you in.
They did.
That's how they lure you into that station wagon.
See, you
I'm
know
just
what?
telling
you.
And then the station wagon eats you.
We would be dead because the poor helpless good-looking guy would be like, "Oh, let's help him."
No.
Oh no.
We need to work on this.
We need to work on this for sure.
No, but I don't know. I feel like it's so hard for me to try and think of what the kid is. But again, I'm very intrigued to see the aftermath of all of this, and especially, like I said, especially how it affects Henry now.
Yes,
because in his mind, he's still trying to help the kid is still his client,
right? And the kid technically didn't do anything.
Technically,
so how does he proceed from there? He just showed up at the house, which, granted, is not great. But he didn't attack anybody, and he didn't do anything.
He's like
he was
virus,
just there.
though.
Yes.
Yeah. He's like a plague that just shows up and it's just like, because I'm in your area, your life is about to be now you've caught whatever it is that I have, and that's gonna make you get into a fight with Veronica. But I never like to see you guys fight, so let's not do that.
No.
But
we might not live long enough for us to fight. A car's gonna eat it.
No,
exactly. The car's gonna eat you
because there's
anyway.
gonna be some good-looking guy
driving
a station wagon with wood panels on the side.
Title for next episode: Station Wagon.
Oh, sorry. This is such a good point. Aurora, I also remember how the kid doesn't want people touching him, yet he willingly danced and held Ruth.
Oh, yes.
But was that the kid or was that Mathew?
Also a great question.
I guess nonetheless.
She did touch him, and things just got worse and worse and worse.
I mean, worse for Ruth. She's still alive, but the love of her life is now dead. So.
Well, they're worse for her too, because now I think she's fully in dementia world. I mean, I don't think she's coming back.
I hope so.
I don't know.
I hope so too. Well, actually, I'm not sure if I do hope so, because honestly,
she's gotta remember.
Yes, she has to remember what she did. I would rather let her see her live out her memories with Pangborn than to realize she's lost him forever.
Mm-hmm.
It would definitely hurt her more to knowing that it was her instead of him just passing.
Another Easter egg.
Another Easter egg. What you got?
Got one. Okay. So did anyone catch, this is Panther 7, did anyone catch the Easter egg when Pangborn mentions coming back from New Hampshire, which is where the Dark Tower half-book he and Molly Chimers got married?
I did not catch that.
Did not catch
that.
Right?
Again, you guys are so on it with these Easter eggs. We love hearing how you are catching these. So definitely keep them coming.
And all of your theories. I'm so sad that my chat froze during that entire show. There are so many good ones in here.
Definitely, because of that, definitely give us your theories in the comments, and we will go back and look at them and talk about them next episode, because I'm sure there are so many good ones that will definitely apply. But for right now, that is unfortunately all the time that we have. I wish we could keep going because there's so much more to talk about. But everyone, where can the fans find you on social media?
Like you, me, who?
I just threw the whole thing off. I'm sorry.
Debate. That's all, folks. You can find. I am Jorge, and you can find me at the El Jorge on all of my social media. I also do the Queen of the South panel on Thursday nights.
All right. And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter, I suppose, at Xia_Land. It's spelled XIA_LAND. Also, The Sinner on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. and Marvel TV Weekly Sunday night at 10 p.m.
And again, you can catch me, Veronica.
You started it!
You started it! Oh no! You can find me, Veronica, on social media, on Instagram and Twitter at It's Me, Veronica_V. You can also catch me on the Attack on Titan After Show Sundays at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, as well as the Outpost After Show Tuesdays at 10 p.m. Pacific Time. Again, thank you for joining us so much. Be sure to catch us next week.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Keven Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
See you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.